honeybee. Oh, honeybee. Won't you be my teacher? Yes, the honeybee. It is a good teacher, isn't it? I'd like to talk about today the approach of the honeybee and how it handles adversity and how it copes in times of stress. It seems that as humans, we tend to get into our own heads. And when we do, we lose track of our purpose and it distracts us. And we tend to fall apart, sometimes at the seams. And I'm finding if we watch the honeybee and how it manages itself in the same stressors, then we could probably glean some valued information on how to rebuild ourselves. So, for instance, as you know, a while back, I had suffered quite a loss of honeybees from the bear attack. And
the bear attack of 2018.
Yes.
Or was it 2019?
It was 2018.
Okay.
Actually, you are correct. And in 2019, Jay, we thought we had a glimpse of hope.
Okay.
The beehive one. We had just before this last cold snap, as you know, we were talking about this last podcast. I had a few bees buzzing around. It was a hopeful moment. And again, total wipeout. Yeah. It's a little discouraging. And as, again, we get in our heads, and I got in my head, and you start to doubt, did I make a right decision? Because I lost so many bees, this is my fault. And guilt, self-critic, blame, all those things. None of these are fruitful, obviously, in any situation. And I was stuck in my head for a while, and my own anxieties creeped up. And I talked about this in the blog about mental health just reared its ugly head and kind of intervened in the situation. And instead of paying attention to how bees did things, it just kind of got stuck for a moment.
Yeah.
So,
and Patti, yes. I already have a couple questions.
Sure.
And if you're new and you're listening, I'm Jay Fratt. I am the producer of The Honey Be My Teacher. That's where you found yourself. That is Patti Haynes, the host of the Honey Be My Teacher podcast and a real life beekeeper. Even if sometimes she's got blood on her knees from tripping and falling and scraping them up in beekeeping, she's here to participate with you on the Honey Be My Teacher podcast, which is a community event on raising bees, being a beekeeper, and being a human.
Absolutely.
First question.
Sure.
Getting in your head. What do you mean by that?
You kind of withdraw into yourself. And your head just races and races and races. You just keep thinking. You overthink everything. And the longer you think on it, you perseverate, which you just can't let it go. And so the big failure word pops up, and now you're a failure, or you've killed your bees. There's the guilt because you put them in harm's way.
So do you mean obsessing, or do you mean you heighten your self-critique? You're criticizing yourself too much?
Yeah, I'd say that.
Are you talking about that mean little voice in the back of your head?
Yeah.
It just gets amplified?
Yeah, and it takes over. I mean, it just kind of gets in control. It just lives in there, and you let it talk more than you can process. And because you have your heart in things too. And so when the heart feels pain, you kind of can navigate a little bit and have somebody on the outside. But if you don't find a place to talk about it or write it down or even manage it by doing something to make it better. And in the winter, that's hard. So how do you rebuild your bees in the winter?
Yeah.
You can't. So I think it just amplified the loss.
I can imagine that is a stress. When you can't do anything about it at that time, it becomes a waiting game.
Yeah.
Hence that voice in the back of the head. It has the most space.
It does.
Just sit there and chirp at you. Oh,
yeah.
The failure, Patti. Why'd you leave it down by the bears when you knew the bears were there? Oh, Patti, you should have done your hive this way.
Right.
And then the worry. Oh, I want to peek. I want to peek and see if there's a queen.
Yep.
But you can't peek because it's cold.
Yep.
There's just a lot of waiting that has to happen.
It is, and of course, everybody knows when you sit silently and you don't get it out and talk about it or try to find something to do with it, it kind of, you can build a whole different story, and the scenario can become an entirely different truth. And when the truth changes, you end up becoming, you can become obsessed, or you can just get anxious, or you can just give up. I don't want people to want to quit when bad things happen. What I ended up doing was I was cleaning out my hives this week and getting ready, because I am getting ready to buy more nukes, as we've talked about. And what what I learned from it was I was just watching, and I was
Wait, for the newbie, nukes.
nukes, the nucleus, which is a mini beehive. It has a box that contains 5 frames, which is the square wax comb area the bees live in, and it contains a queen.
Mm-hmm.
And it usually has a couple honey frames. The brood is in there, and it has an active mini beehive. It's like a mini colony,
Okay.
ready to transfer into your hive.
Okay.
And for the newbies, when we've talked about this in previous episodes, you're welcome to listen to and go and read the blog too. It will reference how that's done in the hive as far as what you purchase and things. But so I'm getting prepared for those things. There's some cleanup to do, and when there's cleanup, you're seeing loss because you're having to clean out all those dead bees, and there are thousands of them.
Yeah.
But I ended up reading a little bit. I started studying a little more about the bees, and what I learned was bees, and I observed this too, they move around and they rebuild constantly. And I was always excited about their resilience, but I think what impressed me about their resilience is their key is the rebuilding element. So let's say a hive has a bear attack in the wild, the area that's damaged, if it's just out of the reach of the bear, they're going to tear down the damaged area and they're going to rebuild it. If it's a bad area, they're going to leave, vacate, and they're going to swarm somewhere else if they've survived it, of course. And they're going to find a new place. And what I noticed was they had to find a safe place. And bees don't always make good choices.
Yeah.
Neither do people.
True.
So it kind of parallels us a little bit to where we're putting ourselves in if we watch them from a parallel perspective, to where that when they put themselves in a bad place, which we could refer to as a toxic situation,
Okay.
we're both in harm's way. And how do you fix that?
I think it's a big question that a lot of people ask themselves.
And I think that's where we get lost, because we get emotion that ties into it, and we have attachments and codependencies.
Mm-hmm.
And when we get dependent on certain situations, that makes us feel like a false sense of security, and something might seem safe when in really it might be a pattern of not safe, and we put ourselves there just like the bees might do,
Yeah.
So it's finding the place for you that's a safe place where you can be your best and your strongest and connect with another person in community that shares the same interest and builds with you. And when you build together, you build stronger.
Yeah, and I don't want to jump ahead on your train of thought, but I did read your blog, and I had the pleasure of having a few conversations outside of it. And so you're having this moment of doubt, this moment of stress, this moment of anxiety. Some people might have mental health issues, that they might call it something else, but an episode, if you will.
Right.
And then you were telling me about the bees and about how the bees, if they have a honeycomb go bad, or to go back to your situation where a bear claws up and knocks a big, let's call it a wing, out of the hive.
Mm-hmm.
You were telling me that they cut it out, that they don't remodel, they don't repair on top of, they completely gut what's been damaged or what's gone bad, and they build from scratch.
Yes. But they recycle the wax that they use. They'll take that all back and they'll actually recycle that, but they rebuild completely.
So when I compare that to humans, and in your situation, your example of maybe having some mental health, you're in that trough of the roller coaster, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think if it's positive to tell people to cut it out, because in one way, your example, you're saying if you're in a toxic environment, and you're going to be like a human. You're going to constantly repair and constantly put patchwork up to
Mm-hmm.
get through, only till the next thing, because you remain in that toxic environment.
Right.
Whereas the bee will get up and get out of there.
Yep.
The bee, if they've got a little bit of cancer, they will remove the whole thing
Mm-hmm.
and they will start fresh and start new.
Yes. They'll rebuild that hive.
And I'm trying to kind of see how you're correlating that lesson of the bee to humans.
Well, when you look at it from that point of view, especially when you refer to the patching part,
Hmm.
and I think if you could learn not to patch everything, I think that was a term we used over the years. Let's patch things up. When
Yeah.
I think it would have been better to have said, let's cut out the cancer
Yeah.
and let's rebuild and be healthier together. And
It would
that would be a better direction.
it would be nice if people could sit down logically
Hmm.
and say, well, we've got a bunch of patches on this boat.
Yeah.
We keep taking on water. Let's focus our attention on how we can get you in another stable boat,
Right.
and I can get in another stable boat,
Right.
and we will go down this river of life separately,
Yeah.
and go in our separate streams, if
Sure.
you will.
Sure.
But it's not. I mean, it's tough for people to do.
It is.
We get stuck in our rhythms.
It is. I mean, we get into jobs that are toxic like that, and we stay in a place because we think that's all we can do. I mean, we quit stretching ourselves. We create these boundaries when instead of having healthy boundaries that will help us to expand and grow and say no in the right areas, we get our mental health issues get in the way, and we choose to go in the deep end where people might overdo drugs or alcohol or really addictive behaviors that are self-destructive. I mean, you can diet yourself to death. You can do so many
Yeah.
things. And again, it's patches. You're just all these patches. You've got to take that. You've got to pull off the patch. If there's something, a cancer in there, you got to get rid of it. You got to treat the problem and fix it. And you can't fix it overnight. Bees, it's a process. They rebuild, but they also are constantly building. They don't just say, oh, it's good, we're done, this is what we got.
Yeah.
They get bigger and bigger. Why? Because then the bigger they are and the healthier they are, the longer they thrive and the healthier they stay. And we can do that too. We can just, instead of taking the patches, we build on ourselves and like capacity. So if you were to let's say you take a pitcher
Mm-hmm.
and there's a spigot in the bottom of it, right? And you keep it plugged and you fill it up till it's full and you sit there and you don't do anything with that to make anything better. You don't water anything. You don't give life to anything. Nothing lives. And what sits in that pitcher is capacity with potential that just stagnates.
Yeah.
So, and then you get stuck in yourself and you stagnate and you don't grow. But if you turn on the spigot and empty it out, get rid of the icky water, fill it with fresh water and keep it coming. Find the healthy things and keep refilling to capacity. The longer that spigot stays open, the more you actually take on.
Yeah.
And it's not overwhelming anymore because you're pouring out yourself to others just as much as you're taking in, to where it's almost like people would refer to as blessings, or the universe just pouring out good things to them.
Yeah.
Those things as well. And that's a direction that would make more sense.
Yeah, I've been dealing with, and it could just be being Washingtonians.
Yeah.
What's amazing about this winter is we had a wonderfully sunny winter.
Mm-hmm.
Our winter was not bad at all. We
No.
had a couple weeks of very harsh weather, but other than that, it's been fairly dry. The skies have been clear.
It's been pretty.
It's been very beautiful. But there's still that time of the year where before daylight savings time kicks in, the sun goes down so much sooner.
Mm-hmm.
You get so much less daylight. I've been dealing with a little bit of funk, you might say, stress. I just put my head down and I work all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about that. I was thinking about, if I were to retire, I were to change, I would still stay busy doing other things. I would
Mhm.
always, it's almost like my coping of the stressful situations is to constantly work, is to
Yeah.
constantly produce, constantly do things to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't take time to step back to relax very often.
Right.
And there's tons of excuses that I give. I've got to take care of my family. I've got to take care of my business. I've got all these things that rely on me.
Right.
Even if my family is saying, no, 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 lay down, take a nap.
Right.
You need to do this for yourself. And I was thinking of the bees, and you mentioned this earlier. One of the things that I strive for, that I miss when I'm constantly doing this work by myself, because I've got so many projects that I can do by myself in society.
Right.
And one of the things I long for is more connection with very good friends. I'm a small town guy, right? So,
Right.
so I have people that I grew up with. And when I say I grew up with them, we knew everybody's business, population 1,200.
Yeah.
And I had this one very good friend. I've had very good friends all my life. Well, you move to a new community, you don't have these people that know your history, you know theirs. And it's
Right.
tough when you get older to then establish and build these connections.
Right.
And you mentioned that once in what you were saying about community, you can't undo your spigot and then fill it back up and kind of have that renewing of life without participation with others.
Exactly.
And the bees, you mentioned this earlier in a conversation, I was almost thinking when we were talking about ripping off the patch and repairing and breakdown, the bees have an advantage. They have this superorganism. They have a community that they're a part of.
Right.
And I was wondering if you have any insights on how humans that maybe they're like, damn, Patti, you're right. I need to get out of this toxic situation.
Yeah.
And they start with a blank slate. They start somewhere else. They start refreshed and new. But how do they then join a community? How do we find those? How do we participate in our own hive organism?
A lot of it is just plugging yourself into. You have to stretch yourself and find a point of interest and plug yourself into places you've never been before. So for people that are interested in the bees, you've got bee organizations all over the place that offer places to connect, and then for people who want to do speech, you've got mixers, you've got all Toastmasters. These are things now, and there's quilting clubs, book clubs. There is a plethora of opportunity out there that doesn't sit you at a computer.
Yeah.
That gets you out and talking to humans. Chamber of Commerce meetings. Pay attention to what's going on locally. Connect with your local government. Do things in your community.
City council meetings.
Volunteer. Just pick up litter. And and let people see you, and someone else will do it too. You be the example, And none of this is going to be comfortable. I don't think bees are comfortable all the time. This is a superorganism that functions on role clarity. They have their time frame that they do a certain thing, and then they move on and they do the next thing, and then they do the next thing until it's time for them to die. And that's what they do. But that is they're fulfilled. They have full purpose, and they're productive, and they make beautiful honey.
Yeah.
And they take care of that queen, and she takes care of them.
Yeah. Well, I guess part of my conundrum is, do I just need to resign myself to the fact that I am a worker bee and I will be working until I die?
No, I think that, and I think that everybody, I'm a worker too. I am right there with you. I get it. I work a lot, and I think that I will always work. I think to some people, work is a form of relaxation too. So don't disregard that. But where I have to remember is I have children, I have grandchildren, I have family, I have friends, and I have to really measure that against what I do and really look at myself honestly without outside input. Look at it, write it down. If I have to do it on a spreadsheet to make it make more sense to me, like a business person would want to look at something, and where's my balance? And I don't mean balance and you have to do everything equally, but am I giving time to people to create value in their lives? I don't feel like I'm legacy. I hear legacy a lot. There's a podcaster I listen to a lot named Gary Vee. I don't know if you've heard of him, but his big thing is legacy, and it's about everything. And he's a workaholic, but he's leaving a legacy. But he makes time, specific time, for his family, and when he does, everything's out.
Yeah.
So that's good too, because those are the memories people share. I think it's just finding the space where you feel healthy and doing it, but doing it with passion.
Yeah.
If you're not happy at what you're at, something's just not happening correctly.
Yeah, you had a great idea. And I think what we're going to try to do is we're going to put some links in the show notes for maybe some local resources for beekeeping. If you want to get involved in
Yeah.
beekeeping, some ways to find community to reach out to. Do you have, if someone's not in our local Olympia, Thurston County, Washington community, do you have some searches that they can, some search ideas that they can put in their Google machine and find their local beekeepers or their
Yes.
local beekeeping community?
Yes. If you're in Washington State, and I'm going to assume most states are like this, the Washington State Department of Agriculture website offers a ton of information on learning about bees and our local impact with bees, but they also have a lot of resources on where you can connect.
Oh, great.
If you're on social media, you have the Washington Beekeepers Association. It's called WASBA.
Okay.
And they are the largest, and there are several smaller beekeeping associations that kind of spawn off of that. So you have those available too. So you've got most counties will have a beekeeping association. Social networking, actually, they offer pages and forums for them all the time.
Okay.
But there's also, if you're a rural person and you don't have a lot of access, then you can also connect through the internet, and you can look up through your Department of Agriculture on a federal level too, and see what works best for you and where you can find that. But I find that the state Department of Agriculture websites offer the best resource for that.
Okay, so we will put some links in the show notes just to try to help people reach out and contact those beekeeping communities, and help people connect a little bit more, work on their own superorganism, being a
Yes.
part of.
Mm-hmm. And I think as a benefit to all of us too, Jay, that community means community. We talk about it a lot. You hear about it. It's a political term. It's been highly politicized, but I'd like to see it more humanized to where that just like how do we become a superorganism together? How can we I talk about circles overlapping each other a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm a person that has a few neighbors, and they buy my honey, and we make friends, and I try to stay connected with them. I'm not going to see them every Friday, but I'm definitely going to stay in contact with them and try to make it out once in a while to something we can all be there together, and then overlap that. And then in my work environment, which I work in a different community completely, I work with those people and have an opportunity to visit with them and create that circle. Now you have your circles here through your shops, and then all of these, and we all talk about the bees, and we all talk about other things, about caring for each other as humans. And slowly those circles start to just overlap. And then it almost looks like, just this giant little paper mache thing where all these pieces have slapped on top of each other. And then you have this, it's weak in the beginning, it's real thin, but it gets stronger and thicker.
That's an interesting concept, and it's a great idea. Let's talk about that when we come back. We'll kind of move on to participating in your own human superorganism.
Yes.
Honey Be My Teacher is brought to you by Smokin' Jays and SmokinJays.com. Everything for your smokin' lifestyle. Just for you, there is a coupon code to save 15% off at SmokinJays.com. It's honey. So enter honey at checkout at SmokinJays.com and receive 15% off your order. And all orders over $100 ship for free at SmokinJays.com. All right, back to the show. All right, and here we are. You said you blew me away a little bit, as Patti often does. But you said an awful lot in a short amount of time just before we went to the commercial break. And it resonated with me because I've moved communities about 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I moved to Thurston County, Olympia, Washington, and I really made a concerted effort in my head that I wanted to join a community. It's possible that this is going to be the last community I live in. And I've taken some steps to join the community. But as we've said, I'm a hard worker, head down. I own my own business. There's a lot for me to work on that where I'm on my own island and I don't really buzz around with the other bees in the hive. I've got my own tasks to work on. Can you explain just a little bit slower and a little bit better on this overlapping circles? Because it made
Hmm.
so much sense to me.
Yeah. So you own the smoke shops, right?
Yeah.
And you're in how many locations?
5.
Okay, so you have 5 opportunities to still make connections so that even though it's at work, I say that as I raise my fingers in quotations.
Sure.
So as you're doing that, you are in a position to really connect from a true human level,
Hmm.
not business only. And I'm sure you do. That's probably why your business does well. You make engagements, you're connected to
Hmm.
your people. Your guests are like your friends, right?
Yes.
So, and you're able to have discussion. So now we have an opportunity to create, you've got a small circle at each location that you have.
Hmm.
And then you have the little bit of the time that you have here with me and that we talk about the bees. And because of that, you've reached out to people and you've connected with beekeepers or you've run into beekeepers in your local community.
Yes.
Okay, so now you've got another circle here. So here I am doing my circles, working at my job over here and over here, and I'm doing it with purpose, right? We're
Hmm.
all, if we live with purpose and don't just wing it and just fly by the seat of our pants all the time, and we all have the intention that everywhere we land, we want to make an impact. And we don't have to be the savior of the free world, but we do need to make an impact to where that what did I just do? Did I do anything positive in anybody's life today?
Okay.
Was what I said relevant? Was it meaningful? Was it authentic? Was I empathetic? Those are the things that make people remember who you are and come back.
Hmm.
And then they bring people. Okay, so now you got this little network and you've got their circle.
Yeah.
And all these circles are drawn together. And when they come together, it's just like when kids take bunch of pieces of paper mache, they start laying them out and there's not much to it, right?
Yeah.
But you stick it together and then you build on it. And the more layers you do, not only do you have a wide range of community, but you have a strong community.
Yeah.
And community is a big umbrella term for lots of little cells of people doing something with purpose together.
Yeah.
That's my definition of community.
Yeah, one of the just dealing with you and the podcast, also being a part of my homeowners association, the bee world kind of came into that sphere.
Yes,
So I kind of understand when you're saying these circles. If you build your circles, eventually they will overlap, and then
absolutely.
that's the link to other communities, or link your circles together, if you will.
Right. And I think that like you're a worker bee, so your circles might not be huge,
Hmm.
but they're there because everything you have is, like I said, with purpose.
I think, Patty, my trouble is remembering my circles. Where did I leave my circles?
Well, you at least have 5 that you know where they're at because you go to them on a regular
Yes.
basis. So, but I think that if we do that too, remember too that there are some people that just tend to be outlandishly out there and their circles will be bigger. So you've got that too that can kind of overlap where you get a lot of overlap to where that we all kind of fall into their circle and you might be at the north end of the circle and there might be somebody at the south end that you may never meet for years and then one day you know, always hear about like 6 degrees of
Yes.
separation, how eventually one day you connect and it's like, wow, we knew this. I was there. You were there. There's a connection. And I just think the world is full of those types of connections.
Yeah. Okay. I want you to repeat something to help the listeners or help me. What is it again you say to yourself when you interact with someone or you have your day? You said you act with empathy.
Empathy, purpose was what I said was did I do anything positive in somebody's life? Did I contribute positivity to somebody's life? Was I relevant and was I empathetic and was I authentic?
Okay. I'm going to circle back now to the mental health that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
That's a lot for some people.
it
And
is.
if you're at the bottom of, if you're at the trough of the roller coaster, if you are stuck in the downward spiral,
Mm-hmm.
that can be hard to. That's another thing that you force responsibility upon yourself.
But at the same time, too, I agree. At the same time, take the moment, and it's a rough time. It's hard, and you're emotional, and you feel broken. But get out of your head as much as you can, even if it's for a glimmer of hope, and reach out to somebody. Again, that's where the safety is important, because it has to be in a safe place. Don't go to the same connections you went to that always put you back in the same spot.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time to find a new connection.
Yeah, I would imagine somewhere in there is taking an honest look in the mirror
For
and
sure.
understanding your role in either the toxicity of the situation or that hole that you have to keep patching.
Yes.
Um, Repeat it again, the mantra that someone should do each day or each time they come into contact with somebody.
Was I positive? Was I authentic? Was I empathetic?
Hmm.
And did I contribute?
Did I contribute? That I think those are amazing words. And if it's almost like when you're in Little League baseball and they teach you, how to swing a bat and strike that ball. You've got to go through
Yeah.
a checklist of, okay, elbow in, or my hands back,
Mm-hmm.
okay, feet shoulder length apart.
Right.
That's a very good checklist that someone can take into interactions each day.
Absolutely.
And I think that would make their day become more positive.
I would think so.
And then at the end of the day, if you want another tool for working on integrating yourself into this hive, our human hive in the United States of America, or start small and just say your neighborhood
Right.
or the county or the state. We all have different ambitions,
Right.
but if you're looking to start, you can just start with what's local and what's around you.
For sure.
Might be to journal.
Absolutely.
I have a really hard time remembering people's names, and it doesn't mean I'm less authentic when I'm dealing with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something I just didn't pick up in life, or just my brain works in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody had a number on their sleeve, I would be able to remember that number really easy,
Sure.
just the way my brain works. But maybe someone like myself can sit down and journal.
Right.
Sometimes when I've met important people in my neighborhood, I'll put them into my phone.
Mm-hmm.
I won't, even if I don't have their phone number,
Right.
I'll still put them into my phone as a contact.
Right.
So that I can go back, and most phones these days, you can tag somebody, whether it's a title or where they work.
Right.
We can say their address, or again, in the neighborhood situation, 4 houses down,
Red house on the right.
red house on the right. It's so important, because a lot of times when we go back to the mental health from earlier in this episode, it's feeling disconnected.
Yeah.
So much of when we're feeling down
Mm-hmm.
is feeling disconnected, is
Right.
feeling alone.
You do. And that's why we need a superorganism mentality, because the hive doesn't do that. The hive rallies around to keep the queen healthy. The hive, they groom each other. So way back, we talked about a varroa mite. And we just mentioned it about some of the things that are up against bees. And when the varroa mite is discovered, when you put like a powdered sugar on your bees,
Yeah.
bees will groom each other. They take care of each other. It's like, oh, you shouldn't look like that. Let me fix you.
Yeah.
And they help them up and they clean them up and they just get them back into a state of health. So, and if that varroa mite happens to be on there, then they get it off. And that's how they clean them off. That's a natural process that organic beekeepers like to use. But it's a great scenario, too, because when we see people have things fall on their shoulders and the weight of the world is on their shoulders, it wouldn't hurt for us as humans if we observe something. And not everybody is receptive. I get it. But you don't have to say, hey, is there anything I can do for you or anything? But sometimes it's just a smile.
Yes.
Maybe it's a simple gesture that we can do that eventually. I see a lot of frowning. I work in retail, and it amazes me how it can be beautiful outside and people can come in and they wonder why they're having such a crappy day.
Yeah.
And I don't ever see them smile, and they complain about everything under the sun. And if you got to change your self-talk.
Yes.
And you've got to talk to yourself and use your mantra. And if it doesn't fit in there, you shouldn't be talking about it. So, because it's so easy to get negative.
Yeah.
I was a man that was an influence in our family's life when we were younger. He was my best friend's dad. And what he would say was, it was in a religious perspective. And his reference to girls dating boys that were not Christians. And this is a an approach to look at things. And his says was, okay, you're stepping up on this pedestal because you are trying to live above reproach was the term. It's Christianese,
Sure.
obviously. And he said, and here's your friend that's standing down here below you. Who has more leverage? Can you lift them up or can they pull you down quicker?
Yeah, you can pull down easier.
Yeah. So the negativity always has the leverage.
Ah,
It's twice as hard, it seems, to get rid of the negativity.
yeah.
So that's where you have to set boundaries personally, mentally, emotionally. And it doesn't mean I have anxiety. Mental health is. There's nothing I can say that will make that permanently go away, but it's manageable and it's learning how to manage. And some of us, I didn't get that skill set till I was much older. My children were all grown when I started developing that skill set. And it's something that if we can learn and share and not be ashamed of, I think that's a big part of it. And I think community deteriorates when people hide in shame.
Yeah.
Because where do you go?
Yeah, well, but our community is getting very strange now in the fact that sometimes people are shaming where there's no need to shame.
They're being shamed for wearing the wrong color hat. They're being shamed for having an opposing political stance. They're being shamed for the wrong color of skin. They're being shamed for wearing an outdated outfit. The list boggles my mind at how shaming is so comfortable. And I think the biggest shame we should think is on ourselves for shaming.
Yeah.
That should be eliminated.
Yeah, we're going to need to. We don't have time in this particular podcast, but this is leading into a conversation I'd like to have with you. And again, it can tie into bees and what bees can teach us. But the tribalism, it's kind of a catchphrase nowadays, but it's basically groupthink. It's not taking an honest look at opposing viewpoints or different types of people.
Yeah.
And right now, because society's gotten so large, you can have these pockets. You can join these pools of people and never be disagreed with and always think the same things. But it's hurting us so much to not respect other people's viewpoints. I would like to talk with you about that today.
Yeah.
So many good things. Mental health. We talked about a mantra you can take into each day dealing with people, trying to connect with communities to become more of the superorganism. One thing you also mentioned is lifting people up, or just with a simple smile.
Yeah.
But just in the way we treat people. I saw this video the other day that enraged me. It was a video of this. It was like probably a 40-some-odd-year-old man on a subway, and he was kicking, probably looked like an 80-year-old woman, 70-year-old woman, who was sitting on the subway, kicking her in the head, and he kicked her in the head again, and he kicked her in the side, and he put his foot up against her face and pushed, and then he walked off the subway and gave like a mic drop. I don't want to advertise for this thing, but he did this modern mic drop. Basically put this on the YouTube, and I thought, and everybody was so enraged at this man that would do it. Horrible. It goes without saying what a terrible act it was, and all I could think about were the knuckleheads that were filming.
Yes.
Because there were multiple people. You can hear in the film, there's one kid, a male, holding up his phone filming this, and then you can hear some other people around almost cheering him on. And that's what angers me, is no bee would ever allow another bee to do that within their own hive.
No.
And it doesn't take much, people. I'm not saying, let's say he's a 14-year-old kid. I'm not saying he should go and physically confront. But instead of getting your phone up and cheering someone on, sometimes if you raise your voice and say, hey, don't do that.
Right.
What are you doing? Look at what you're doing. That can stop a situation.
Right.
Just try to get the person, whatever mental state he was in.
Right.
Just trying to get them to snap out.
Hold them accountable.
Hold them accountable. And I believe the bees are great. All right. I don't want to get off into that societal stuff. tell me where you're at right now. You've got your bees have passed.
Yeah.
You thought they were coming back, but they're not.
No, they're gone.
So now you're starting from scratch.
I am.
And that involves buying some nukes, and we're not talking about going to Pakistan and seeing some Iranian or some North Korean scientists.
No.
buying some bee nukes.
Yep.
How is that going to go? Or are you looking forward to it? When do you start that? When, if somebody's in the same situation you are, or somebody's just starting for the first time, we're having some beautiful days.
Yes.
What is the timing of it right now as spring approaches quickly?
Well, with people who have the beehives that have done well, there's been a lot of loss this year across the state. That's and that's something we've shared on the forums. The bees are out. They're loving it. Anytime it hits 50, they're outside. They're having a blast. And things are starting to bloom already too. Dandelions are in bloom, and that is their first food. So they're out and they're going to start harvesting, getting some nectar flow going. It's time now to get your equipment in order. And our next podcast is going to be the DIY on the equipment that you're going to need.
Okay.
But you can order your bee nucleuses, or I don't want to go into packages. I think that's for an advanced beekeeper. But the nucleus. And you can order that now. And you want to pre-order them because they'll be coming in April, and people are lining up to get those now.
Okay.
There usually are some available later in April anyway, after the first buy
but
happens.
April is the time frame where it's safe.
Yep.
The temperatures won't drop. It's safe to have and start your hive.
Yeah, all the nukes come in, usually, especially if they're coming up from California. They will arrive, and they'll be on big trucks, and then they will be safely transported. And then we will go and pick up our nukes at that point in time at an appointed destination. I order my bees through Hive 5 Bees, the number 5, through Kevin Mills. He's my mentor, so he's the one that I order mine from.
Okay.
Yeah, he does a really good job, and you just place the order. My bees are going to be, if you order under a certain number of packages, you pay $145. For the nuke. If you do 5 or more, it's $135.
Okay.
So there's a breakdown. I recommend all new beekeepers. The mistake I made too is I had like 9 hives my first year.
Yeah.
Just get 2. Don't go more than that. Just learn to manage your bees. That way you can learn to split them, which we will talk about in future podcasts. And then you can go and do, harvest feral hives even. You can catch swarms. You have other opportunities, but it doesn't do any good to get all these bees and not know how to manage them and make the mistakes I made. I mean, my accountability side of me says, hey, I did make a mistake and bees suffered because of me. And we lost greatly. And it hurt because you do fall in love with your bees.
Yeah.
You really do.
Yeah. All right. She mentioned it. DIY episode number 1 is already out. We'll be working on DIY episode number 2 coming up. Other than that, we'll be back. We'll be back with random episodes of Bee Goodness.
That's right. I love Bee Goodness. I do. And I love the help I get from Jay to be good.
Thank you, Patti. We'll be back, Jay. You guys.
I am so grateful to have shared my love of the honeybee with you. I have so much more to share as we all grow in knowledge to save the honeybee, which will ultimately save us. This podcast is brought to you by Smoke and Jays and smokeandjays.com. Use coupon code HONEY for 15% off your next order, and all orders over $100 ship for free. I'd like to thank my producer, Jay Fratt, for bringing my love for honeybees to the podcast format. He has his own podcast called The Conservative Hippie, which is available on all podcast platforms. Just go to theconservativehippie.com. Visit me at honeybeemyteacher.com to connect with me and enjoy all the buzz about our amazing little friends. Let's be social. All of my social media links are available in the show notes. Please email me anytime at bemyhoney.honeybees@gmail.com. So until we meet again, be mindful, be thankful, and most of all, be kind.